Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society's digital programming. I'm Ben Spagan and I'm the Vice President at the Jefferson.
Hi, I'm Angela Beaumont. I'm the Director of Operations at the Jefferson.
We will be serving as the moderators for the Democratic primary candidates debate for Pennsylvania State Senate District 49. Joining us via Zoom for this digital debate are the candidates, Mr. André Horton and Ms. Julie Slomski. Both are vying to become the Democratic challenger to Republican incumbent Pennsylvania State Senator of the 49th District, Dan Laughlin. After Pennsylvania's June 2nd primary, one of these two candidates will go on to face Senator Laughlin in November's general election. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Both the candidates and their campaigns have been briefed on the debate format, but let's recap. Each of the candidates will have up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. Similarly, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for their closing remarks. In between, the moderators will pose questions to the candidates. The ordering of the responses will alternate back and forth from question to question and candidate to candidate, and we'll move from topic to topic. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond to each question. Today's debate will feature a lightning round of questions. For those, candidates are asked to provide concise answers. The order in which the candidates will respond has been determined by a random drawing which took place prior to the start of this debate. Candidates were witness to the drawing, and so were Angela and I. Mr. André Horton will offer opening remarks first and will receive the first question. Ms. Julie Slomski will offer closing remarks first. Candidates have been kindly asked to be mindful of their allotted time. The moderators will be monitoring the candidate's response time. The moderators reserve the right to press a candidate to wrap up their answer, allow for further elaboration, and to ask follow-up questions based on the candidate's answers. Both candidates have pledged that they won't be Googling for answers and won't be communicating with anyone outside of these folks featured in this debate right here, right now. This debate is being recorded via Zoom and will be made available to the public on the Jefferson's website at www.jeserie.org, as well as the Jefferson social platforms. Again, I'm Ben Spagan along with my Jefferson colleague, Ms. Angela Beaumont, and together we are here to moderate a debate between Democratic primary candidates for Pennsylvania State Senate District 49 between Mr. André Horton and Ms. Julie Slomski. Mr. Horton, you have won the right to begin this debate. Please offer your opening remarks. A friendly reminder, you have up to 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Spagan. Hi, I'm André Horton, Democratic candidate for Pennsylvania State Senate's 49th District. I was born right here in Erie, Pennsylvania, to the late Howard and Mildred Horton. My parents were God-fearing, family-loving, community-serving, blue-collar union workers. They were shop stewards and presidents. They were den mothers, dorm parents. They were activists, and their love of community and services carried over to me. Upon completing high school, I enlisted into the United States Air Force. Having served 7 years as a disaster preparedness specialist, completing my enlistment, I enrolled into the ranks of the Pennsylvania State Police. I'm a 33-year member of Labor's Local 603. I've organized the labor walks. I've done GOTV. I've done the rallies. I've even taken food to my fraternal brothers and sisters who have fallen on lean times. I know what leadership looks like. I'm running because I believe that Harrisburg is broken, and I believe that we can no longer afford to do the status quo. COVID-19 has illuminated things that Harrisburg has either failed to fix or been unwilling to address. And so I'm throwing my hat into the ring because I think that I bring a new spirit that's much needed in Harrisburg. I bring independence, but most of all, I bring leadership. I'm the most experienced candidate in the race on either side of the aisle. Currently, I'm the chairman of Erie County Council for the second time. I've been the chair or the vice chair 3 out of the last 4 years. I'm the chairman of the Erie County Retirement and Pension Fund. I'm the chairman of the Pleasant Ridge Manor Retirement and Pension Fund. I started an organization, co-founded an organization called Empower Erie, so that we could advocate for a much needed community college. And should I go to Harrisburg?
Mr. Horton, that's 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to wrap up in 15 seconds here.
Well, should I go to Harrisburg, or when I go to Harrisburg, I'm going to do everything I can to fight for the working men and women the 49th district. I'm not going to Harrisburg to walk in lockstep with anyone. I'm not going to Harrisburg to follow. I'm going to Harrisburg to lead.
Mr. Horton, thank you. Ms. Slomski, your opening remarks. Friendly reminder, you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, Angela, as well, for having us here today. As you mentioned, my name is Julie Slomski. Like many of you, I was born here in Erie. I was raised here in Erie. I chose to stay in Erie because I believe in Erie, and I chose to run for this seat because I believe we can do better. Growing up, my parents and grandparents raised me to make sure we focused on hard work and humility. We lived within our means. We never took anything for granted. They taught me the importance of community, because the place you call home matters, and you better work as hard as possible to make sure it's a place you're proud to call home. My grandmother was a member of AFSCME. My grandfather was a member of UE 506, and they, again, taught me the value of hard work and why it was so important. One thing for me is I was blessed with the opportunity to work for Governor Wolf. And during my time with Governor Wolf, we were able to secure over $100 million in investments here in the region, from the Erie Port to UPMC Park to saving the Erie School District, focusing on why our community matters so much to us. One thing I've learned along this campaign trail is there's still some unfinished business. We need to make sure that minimum wage is raised. For far too long, it's been far too low. There's too many single moms working multiple jobs to barely make ends meet. I can relate, I'm raised by a single mom, understand where that's coming from. One thing also that bothers me is healthcare. It's a human right. There's so many people out there that are struggling, and because healthcare is not affordable and not accessible. I've heard folks say they have to choose either filling their gas tank or filling, their prescription. That's not right. And most importantly, education. That should be first and foremost. Education is the foundation of opportunity, making sure that we receive our fair share. So again, I thank you for having me here today. Look forward to this conversation and really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Slomski, thank you. And now to the debate. Friendly reminder, you each will have 1 minute to respond to these questions. Again, by order of random drawing, Mr. André Horton will go first. Angela, we'll go to you for the first question to Mr. André Horton, and then Ms. Julie Slomski, you'll have a minute to respond to the same exact question, and we'll go back and forth.
Yes, Mr. Horton, why do you identify as a Democrat?
Why do I identify as a Democrat? I'm about as blue as they come. I identify as a Democrat because I believe that Democrats are the party of education and not incarceration. I believe that Democrats are the party of working class people. I'm the I've been a ward chair for almost a decade, and I was a committee man for twice that. I worked on my first campaign as a Democrat in 1968 as an 8-year-old with my parents doing voter registration. And it's all I know is union. We were a union family with union values, good God-fearing people, and we were known for our hard work ethic. And we were not only that, we were known for our love and our service in the community. My family has served this community for almost 100 years, and we're very proud of that fact. And it's all been, we've never been anything but Democrats. We fought, we've worked hard for candidates, we ran campaigns, and we're involved, not sometime, not most of the time, we're involved all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Ms. Slomski, why do you identify as a Democrat?
It comes down to, it's very similar to Mr. Horton, is my grandparents early on, but both sets of grandparents, like I said, were union members, or my grandfather that ran the funeral home. They always taught me that, we're the working class. We're always going to be the working class. And the Democratic Party is the party of the working class. Again, working as hard as possible to make sure you're helping better your life and the life of those around you. But it comes down to that. It's just pure and simple. Democrats truly believe in the working class, and that's why I'm so excited to be in this race. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to flip the Senate, to provide an opportunity for all of Erie County here in the 49th to truly see how it is to reap the benefits of being a Democrat. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
So Ms. Slomski, this question goes first to you and then to Mr. Horton. How do you see your vision of your party aligning at the state level to the tone of the party on the national level?
That's a really good question, Ben. And I think I mean, I would hope that we could see, as they say, a blue wave, coming here in 2020, so that we could have a similar match in terms of the federal and the state level. But for me, again, as I mentioned, flipping the Senate is so important because we want to focus on what matters most to those around us, especially here in Erie. And that gets back to what I mentioned in my opening comments, is that raising the minimum wage, that is so needed. And of course, with healthcare, I mean, healthcare, it's a human right. It needs to be affordable and accessible. And I think that's something we as a party are truly focused on. It has not been forgotten by any means. And with that opportunity to have the Democratic control of the Senate, we'd be able to move forward with those initiatives. Thank you, Ben.
So Mr. Horton, same question to you. How do you see your vision of your party aligning at the state level to the tone of the party on the national level?
Well, I see my vision as in that role as supporting the National Democratic Party, where we're like-minded. And most of our answers aren't going to be very much different from the Democratic perspective, Ms. Slomski's and I, because everything from national to state level, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the affordable wage, and I don't believe that we should be fighting for minimum wage. I think it should be a family sustaining wage, and it should be tied to the cost of living index, just as a caveat. But all of those issues that I've worked for over the last 20, 30 years, civil rights, human rights, new American rights, LGBTQ rights, just all the things that America is made up of. And so here, the federal government has spilled over into the state government, and we have sanctuary cities, and we're at odds. And you see the failure if we don't get together, the states and the national. You're seeing it play out right now.
Mr. Horton, that's a minute. I'll give you 10 seconds to finish up there.
You're seeing it play out with the COVID-19 response, which I believe has been woefully short on the federal level, and it's left the states to kind of figure it out on their own.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Angela, next question.
This goes back to André Horton. The impacts of the COVID-19 crisis remain ongoing. Largely, the pandemic has forced many to adapt operations and work digitally. What have you done, and what are you doing to prepare the legislate virtually?
Mm-hmm. Well, we from my county seat right now is I've been very involved, and I hope to take that over. That carries over when I get to Harrisburg. My background is in disaster preparedness. I believe that the COVID-19 response is going to be dictated by the virus itself. I've started funds with the ECRA, Game and Revenue Authority, to meet the human need. We fed people. We've invested in a loan fund with Bridgeway Capital, and we continue. We're about to do testing of some of the neighborhood centers, and I think that without testing, even though we're in code yellow, I think that it's probably a little premature. And without testing, we're like a kid in the backyard, blindfolded, swinging at a piñata. And I do realize the economics of it all as well. But I've done plenty, and I intend to continue.
Thank you. And the same question to Ms. Slomski. The impacts of the COVID-19 crisis remain ongoing. Largely, the pandemic has forced many to adapt operations and work digitally. What have you done? What are you doing to prepare to legislate virtually?
And that's a good question as well, because I think this is going to be the unfortunate wave of the future, is making sure where everything is digitally and virtually. Been part of many meetings, many trainings, and many conversations, Zoom rooms, or in a virtual form. And I think it's so important that we realize the significance that we can still communicate and still operate this way. Getting back to the pandemic as a whole, was doing my best to help folks that maybe didn't have the resources, connecting with some folks that may needed some food or in the outskirts of the county, needed some necessities, toilet paper, what have you. I did my best to help out here locally with a lot of our frontline workers and first responders, and was able to purchase some surgical masks to be able to pass those out so those folks that needed those had those. And again, it was through these virtual requests, whether through Zoom rooms, through social media, and of course, through email, what have you, that folks have been reaching out. So I think it's something we need to be cognizant of and to make sure we're doing our best to help our neighbors, because yes, again, that testing is so important, should be available to everyone, and that contact tracing has been great here.
That's been a minute. I'll give you 10 seconds to wrap up.
Perfect. Contact tracing has been great here in Erie County, and we could use some additional dollars to make sure we're doing that and properly educating everyone on this pandemic. Thank you, and sorry for going over.
All right, thank you. That's why we're keeping good time here. Both of you acknowledged early that there are going to be similarities between your platforms and your democratic ideals when it comes to the party. But what key three things differentiate you from your Democratic opponent and make you the better candidate to challenge incumbent State Senator Dan Laughlin in fall's general election? Please keep it to 3. And if you can, give us your list first. Ms. Slomski, this goes to you first.
I'm going to start off with my 7 years experience in state government, and continue on to the relationships that I've built in Harrisburg. And again, tying right back to it, it's just my overall knowledge on the issues themselves. My 7 years experience starts with Representative Bizzarro, then moves on to with Governor Wolf, understanding, truly how state government operates and how we've been able to secure dollars, historic numbers with the Wolf administration to right here for the region as a whole. Secondly, relationships. I have, and I've continued to work with the delegation throughout those 7 years on both sides of the aisle. Of course, Representative Harkins, Representative Mursky, Representative Bizzarro have endorsed my campaign. And on the other side of the aisle, working with, Chairman Sonny, Senator Brooks, and go down right through the line. So I have those relationships there, and getting back again to really understanding how Harrisburg works. There's a lot of great ideas and great suggestions, but it's understanding how to really navigate the overall legislative process in Harrisburg, and I fully understand that. Thank you,
Ms. Slomski. Same question to you, Mr. Horton. We talked about the similarities, but what 3 key differences or what key 3 things differentiate you from your Democratic opponent here and make you the better candidate to challenge incumbent State Senator Dan Laughlin in fall's general election? Keep it to 3, please. And if you can give us your list first, that'd be appreciated.
Experience all day long. I'm currently a legislator, so I know the work of legislator, and I've actually been in the fight. And while I respect the work that my opponent has done as a staffer, I think it's a little disingenuous to say that she's responsible for $100 million being brought into Erie as a staffer. And so what differentiates us is for the last 7 years, I've already stated, I've served in leadership. I know that you have to be a good follower to be a good leader, and I've followed all of my life, but now it's, like I said, I'm the 3 out of the last 4 years, I've either been chair or vice chair. I've been chair twice in the last 4 years on county council. I'm very proud that my peers voted me to that leadership position. When I get to Harrisburg, again, I'm not going to follow, I'm going to lead. We're going to need new leadership. We're going to need new ideals coming out.
So Mr. Horton, that's been a minute. I heard 2, if I can be clear. I heard legislative experience and leadership. Can you tell us your third? And I'm sorry, I've just got to give you 10 seconds for this.
Yeah, my third is that I was elected and I've been held accountable, whereas I wasn't hired. And so I've been held up to scrutiny by everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Angela, back to you.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Horton. Pennsylvania's minimum wage is currently set at the federal minimum of $7.25 an hour since 2009. A full-time year-round minimum wage worker earns only $15,080 annually, less than the federal poverty threshold for a family of 2. As a Pennsylvania senator, would you support the governor's proposal to raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour?
Not only that, the day that I get to Harrisburg, I'll try to override or build a consensus to move that $9.50 an hour that Harrisburg felt generous to give to blue collar workers, when really $9.50 an hour isn't enough now. And so on day one, I'll ask for $12 an hour. Sure, I'll support it. And I'll ask for that same 18 to 24 months that they were going to gradually increase it to $9.50, that it be allotted to 15 or move to $15 an hour. And I don't think it should be a minimum wage. I think it should actually be a family sustainable wage. And it should, once again, be tied to the cost of living index.
Thank you, Mr. Horton, for the answer. Same question to you, Ms. Slomski. Pennsylvania's minimum wage is currently set at the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour since 2009, which means that a full-time year-round minimum wage worker earns only a little more than $15,000 annually, which is less than the federal poverty threshold for a family of two. As a Pennsylvania senator, would you support the governor's proposal to raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour?
Absolutely. And similar to Mr. Horton, I mean, I really believe in the fight for 15. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but I truly believe in that. Talk to too many frontline workers right now in the middle of the pandemic, especially those working in grocery stores, and they're struggling. And this is a great example of why we need an increase in minimum wage. I mean, who would ever think that a grocery store would be a worker, would be a frontline worker? And I feel so bad for so many of them that have received a little bit of bonus here and there, but they need a family sustaining wage, especially with some of them are having some health issues right now. And I get back to that. And too many, again, single parents missing out on their children growing up, working 2 to 3 jobs to barely make ends meet. That's not right. And it's about time we raise that wage. And I absolutely agree with the governor and his initiative. About time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Slomski, this question goes to you first. The state of Vermont in January of 2019 began offering its remote worker grant program, which incentivizes individuals to move to Vermont while working remotely for their company that is not based in the Green Mountain State. Just this year, Vermont introduced its new worker relocation grant program to provide, quote, assistance to individuals who move to Vermont to work full-time for in-state employers. Should Pennsylvania financially incentivize remote work employment?
That's another great question. I think especially, the climate that we're all in right now, all throughout the country, absolutely. There has to be an opportunity there for folks to come in. I mean, I think one example is maybe tying it to the governor's action team, and they're responsible for recruiting, companies, to come to the region, making sure we were maintaining our companies locally, are not leaving the region. And I think that's a great incentive to bring folks here to the region. So they may work, like you said, for another company, elsewhere, but they're spending their dollars here. And I think that's most important. And I would absolutely support that.
Thank you, Ms. Slomski. Mr. Horton, same question to you. State of Vermont in 2019 began offering a remote worker grant program, incentivizing individuals to move to Vermont while working remotely for a company that's not based there. This year, they introduced the new worker relocation grant program to provide, quote, assistance to individuals who move to Vermont to work full-time for in-state employers. Should Pennsylvania financially incentivize remote work employment?
I oppose that, and I don't think that Pennsylvania should financially incentivize remote workers. I think that there's a lot of talent here in the Commonwealth. I think Pennsylvania's first charge should be to look out for Pennsylvanians, whether it's through quality, affordable education or workforce development. We should be preparing our people for the global jobs, or the global economy, through the new green jobs, as we remove our dependency on fossil fuels into green technology. 65% of the jobs that are going to be here in 20, 25 years have yet to be created. And here in the 49th district, where we have the poorest zip code in the entire country, we should be looking for ways to uplift our people and incentivize them to educate or get training. And so I wouldn't.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Angela, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton, what do you see as the most critical issue facing school districts K through 12 in District 49? And please explain what legislation you would propose to address that challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest challenge in the 49th district is and has always been a lack of equitable funding. Some of our rural schools do all right, and even they're underfunded, but our largest school district, K through 12 district in the region, doesn't have technology. Up until a few weeks ago, the kids were picking up their lunch and Chrome notebooks. Take one home for a family of 9. So COVID-19 has illuminated a lot of things. It's illuminated the lack of technology. It's illuminated the lack of equity. It's illuminated the lack of people don't have high-speed internet in their homes. And so when I get to Harrisburg, I'll advocate for broadband, and absolutely no school should be left without technology not here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the year 2020. I find it appalling.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Slomski. What do you see as the most critical issue facing school districts K through 12 in District 49? And please explain what legislation you would propose to address that challenge.
Similar to Mr. Horton, I mean, I think there's a series of issues from class sizes to what teachers, the wage they make, what have you. But I believe it still comes down to funding. And that's why, again, I had the opportunity to make sure I was fighting for the Erie School District, making sure we were able to receive our fair share. But that goes along with the entire district as a whole, from the more rural districts to the urban district of the Erie School District, making sure that all the students have the tools they need, especially at the early ages, to make sure they are able to be successful. And it bothers me that there are situations where students do not. So we need to make sure that funding is fair and that each district receives its fair share, especially here in the 49th. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Ben.
So Ms. Slomski, this question goes first to you. If you had unlimited funding at your disposal, but could only address just one thing, and I'll be firm on that, just one thing in education in Pennsylvania, education broadly speaking, what would it be? Unlimited funding, only one thing, education in Pennsylvania. What would you do?
Whew, that's a tough one, Ben. That really is. I'm going to take it back to the previous question. I mean, investing in K through 12. I'm sorry, pre-K through 12. I would make sure that we're, really making sure all these students have the tools they need. Mr. Horton mentioned, the Chromebooks or what have you, the tools available, making sure that, every opportunity is there, because our early learners are really, having some moments where they might be struggling. And this is truly helping them and really investing in folks, in the students when they're first, sponges, that they're there to learn and giving them every tool they need. So I would reinvest in pre-K through 12 education. That would be my priority.
And if I could just push it for a little bit, because you still have 20 seconds on the clock, Ms. Slomski, what does that investment look like? Do you have an idea of, is that investment in teachers, supplies, infrastructure? What would you pick if I had to push you on that?
It would be a combination, absolutely, of infrastructure in the schools as a whole, but supplies, making sure they had everything they needed. I mean, we had the Erie School District, copying books and using, old technology for the longest time, and not making sure they had the most modern technology and the best resources available to them. And of course, that does go down to the teachers as well, making sure their salaries are adequate, so teachers aren't forced to go to other districts or, to head in another direction to be paid. So it would be a combination of all of those, truly. There's so much that we could do with that money from the pre-K through 12.
Thank you, Ms. Slomski. Mr. Horton, same question to you. If you had unlimited funding at your disposal but could address only one thing in education in Pennsylvania, unlimited funding, one thing, education in Pennsylvania, what would that be?
It would be pre-K as well. It would be pre-K. But I like to go back a little bit and ask my opponent, because she expounded on how she is a staffer in her role, how she fought for the funding for the Erie School District. Because again, I think that's rather disingenuous. Under that premise, I would say that I fought for every dollar that came through in Erie County, and that's just not true. But I would fund pre-K, because studies have shown the cradle to prison pipeline is a real problem in communities of color. I don't believe that you should be, the zip code that you're born in should determine your destiny and your future. And the data shows that most children, by the age of third grade, you can pretty much tell how many prison beds that you use. And so we have to start we have to build a foundation. Education is the great equalizer.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. I think I'd be remiss if Ms. Slomski, I didn't give you a chance, for a 30-second response if you'd like to address Mr. Horton, his statement there.
For sure, for sure. Had the opportunity to be involved in numerous meetings locally with the school district and with our leaders in Harrisburg. Had the unfortunate opportunity with then Senator Wagner to tour the school district and hear him, call it Baghdad and downplay the situation, but making sure that the governor really understood the true issues we had here and being that advocate, being that voice for Erie, like I always will be. I always have and I always will be. And that was the part that bothered me the most, is that it was neglected or downplayed of the severity of the nature here. And it bothered me again that our students were taking kind of backseat and using these resources that were not giving them the tools they need to succeed. That's the part that bothered me the most. Thank you, Ben.
Ms. Slomski, thank you. Angela, back to you for the questions.
Thank you. Next question goes to André Horton again. COVID-19 crisis withstanding, what is the most pressing health issue facing District 49?
The most pressing, oh God, the most pressing issue facing District 49 is quality, affordable education. The poverty level here is abysmal. The median income is well below the state and national level. The unemployment is above the state and national level. Pennsylvania ranks 47 out of 50 states in job creation, and so I'm failing on the question. Could you reiterate that question again a little bit?
So putting aside COVID-19 crisis, what is the most pressing health issue facing District 49?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, racism. By far, the mayor says that he wants to fight against racism. The 49th district has a serious lack of equity, and COVID-19 has really illuminated it, whether it's technology or access to food.
Mr. Horton, we'll give you 10 more seconds to wrap that up.
Or access to health care. It's illuminated the fact that the essential worker that we placed a value of $725 an hour on it hasn't gotten a fair share, and all our children are leaving. We have brain drain. So
thank you there, Mr. Horton.
Same question to you, Ms. Slomski. COVID-19 crisis withstanding, what is the most pressing health issue facing District 49?
And the key word there, of course, is health, and it comes down to affordable, accessible healthcare. Again, it's a human right that so many people are living without, and that really bothers me. I've been talking to folks that unfortunately have lost their job during this pandemic, and their health insurance was tied to their employment, and they're stuck. They can't afford COBRA. They don't have those opportunities to just go out and like, what do they do? I think we need to really make sure we're keeping mindful of just, again, accessible, affordable healthcare, pre-existing conditions taken into consideration. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done, because it doesn't matter where you're from. You should have that opportunity to have that affordable, accessible healthcare. I mean, it bothers me, and I keep talking about it, but to have people say to me, literally, I don't know what to do. I fill my gas tank or fill my prescription. I have to make a decision or put food on my table. It really bothers me. So it's time to make sure that we have healthcare available for everyone. That is the #1 health issue, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Ms. Slomski, this one goes to you first. While the numbers of deaths have been lower since the peak in 2017, the opioid crisis rages on. What new ideas would you bring to Harrisburg in combating this crisis?
And that's another good question, Ben. I think back to, when you folks were focusing on the opioid crisis with the leadership, the civic leadership group. And it's something that we still need to make sure we're really keeping a close eye on and not ignoring. People are saying that we've tackled it, and not at all. It's continued education, so folks can really realize the signs that are there, and really making sure that all the resources are available for those that are helping from the treatment perspective. That's something that I think there's been some confusion on, and sometimes could be lost sight of, but I think it's continued education we're still in the middle of that crisis, but making sure all the resources are available, again, for those that are helping from the treatment perspective. That's what I believe.
So, Mr. Horton, I'm gonna flip that one to you as well. Number of deaths have been lower since the peak in 2017, but the crisis is still raging on opioids. What new ideas would you bring to Harrisburg in combating this crisis?
hmm First of all, we have to decriminalize being an addict and deal with it as the health issue that it is. This community, in particularly, we've poured so many, and rightfully so, poured a lot of resources into gun violence and keeping violent crime down. And we were having 9 or 10 murders a year, and there were 60, 70 kids dying from opiates every year. It has gone down. I speak with the coroner every time I go into the courthouse, and I ask him, "Hey, Merle, how's it going? What's going on?" And it breaks my heart when he tells me the 15-year-old, the 30-year-old, and so that we do need to fund drug treatment programs. And while we're decriminalizing it, and we've somewhat headed down that path, I hope, because we at the county, we passed out Narcan, made it available to the parents. If you felt that your child was subject to die from an overdose, we
Give you 10 seconds, Mr. Horton.
We made that stuff accessible to you, and it breaks my heart that any Pennsylvania, any child of any age would die from the opiate overdose, and we ought to hold the pharmacy companies liable.
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Thank you. Next question to Mr. Horton, please. Erie County, home to 49th District, is the only county in the Commonwealth directly on the Great Lakes watershed. Millions of dollars flow into Erie County as tourists flock to Presque Isle State Park every year. Yet last year, beaches had to be closed or restricted due to harmful algal bloom. Do you see HABs as a pressing crisis? What is the state's role in addressing it?
I do see it as a pressing crisis. Our 49th district is heavily dependent on our tourism and our fishing industry, and we must protect our waterways and streams and the air. And so I think that with the underfunding of the DEP over the last 20 years, we haven't been able to put eyes on it. And so when I go to Harrisburg, first thing I would ask is that we staff the DEP to the levels that we can at least police and find out who's polluting or the cause of the algae. Whatever we need to do, we need to pour resources in to protect those. We need to put money in to protect those resources, those valuable resources. Our agriculture depends on it, our wineries, our farms. And so I would look to fund to the federal government, look to partner with them and find ways that we could work together to clean the lake or keep the lake clean. And
we'll give you 5 seconds, Mr. Horton.
I need them 5 seconds. I'm good.
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Slomski. Erie County District 49 is the only county in the Commonwealth directly on the Great Lakes watershed. Millions of dollars flow into Erie County as tourists flock to Presque Isle every year. Yet last year, beaches had to be closed or restricted due to harmful algal blooms. Do you see HABs as a pressing crisis, and what is the state's role in addressing it?
I think absolutely HABs are a pressing crisis, a true issue. I've had the opportunity to work with the governors and premiers, which are all the governors on the Great Lake, and work with their staff members in addressing this issue throughout. And of course, with our Great Lakes Commission as well, we need to make sure, as Mr. Horton mentioned, that DEP receives its proper funding. And of course, here locally, Presque Isle, working with the folks at DCNR. But it comes down to we need the funding for it because it really is an issue that, I hate to say it, is not going away. So it's working with the other, folks from the Great Lakes perspective, the governors and premiers, like I said, going into Canada as well, to make sure we're securing those dollars from the federal level as a region, so that we're able to make sure that all the Great Lakes are protected, especially here, making sure Lake Erie is protected. And that's what I would do, is continue to work with the governors and premiers and the Great Lakes region, securing that level funding on a federal level and making sure those dollars are put to use here at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this question is going to go to Ms. Slomski first. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Pennsylvania ranks second only to Texas in the production of natural gas, and third behind Wyoming and West Virginia, respectively, in coal production. Pennsylvania ranks 22nd in the country for solar energy and 16th for wind power, according to Penn Environment. What is the future of energy in Pennsylvania, and what legislation would you be working on to get to that future as you see it?
And that's a great question, because future, I mean, is these, clean, green energy jobs. There are so many opportunities out there, whether it is, solar, wind power, as you mentioned, the natural gas side of things. I mean, we have so many opportunities out there that we need to make sure we're making the most out of them. And that, ties into natural gas, and of course, on the side of fracking. And we have an asset that's here underneath the ground that could provide economic opportunities, making sure that DEP is fully funded in terms of regulation, to make sure that we have that severance tax and we receive our fair share for the Commonwealth as a whole. It could be used for infrastructure, it could be used for education, but we have this asset, it's here, it's not going anywhere. I think we need a severance tax all throughout to make sure, again, we're getting our fair share. I mean, every other state in the country has it. We don't. We're letting these gas companies just, make their money, and we don't get anything here. So I would push, for anything possible to make sure we're getting these clean energy jobs here. Clean energy jobs here, and I would push for a severance tax. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Mr. Horton, same question to you. According to U.S. Energy Information Administration, Pennsylvania ranks second only to Texas in the production of natural gas, and third behind Wyoming and West Virginia, respectively, in coal production. Pennsylvania ranks 22nd in the country for solar energy generation and 16th for wind power, according to Penn Environment. What is the future of energy in Pennsylvania, and what legislation would you be working on to get to that future as you see it?
The future of energy in Pennsylvania is going to be green energy, wind and solar. For the most part, you already see it's 22% and 16% respectively. Then there will be fracking, but it should be on the other part of the state. I'm totally against fracking in the 49th district, and where we don't have Marcellus Shale, we have Utica Shale, which means they would have to frack deeper. And it could, anything that would possibly threaten our waterways, our agriculture, and our air. I'm totally against it. I think that it works well in other communities, but it's not for the 49th. And so I believe that not only that Pennsylvania's dependent upon fossil fuels will wane, I believe that the nation will move towards newer and renewable energy sources. And we should never, ever, ever allow a energy company to come in here and
5 seconds, Mr. Horton,
without getting an extraction tax. We have the largest Marcellus Shale in the world. We're the only place in the entire world that doesn't get an extraction tax.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Angela, back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton, the Southern Poverty Law Center identified 36 hate groups in Pennsylvania last year. Which measures do you see as effective in the fight against bigotry and to protect minorities?
I've actually been down to the Southern Poverty Law Center a few times. They do great work, and I've known for a long time that Pennsylvania, I think they were second to Florida in number of hate groups in this nation. I served as the NAACP president for a few terms. My mother in the 60s, my father in the 80s, me in the 2000s, my brother currently is now. And so as a legislator, I would strengthen the existing hate law legislation and make it more enforceable. And I would make penalties higher.
Thank you. Same question to you, Ms. Slomski. The Southern Poverty Law Center identified 36 hate groups in Pennsylvania last year. Which measures do you see as effective in the fight against bigotry and to protect minorities?
Hate has no place here in the Commonwealth as a whole, especially in the 49th. And I would do everything in my power as a legislator to make sure that's enforced to the highest level possible. It's not right on any level whatsoever, and it would not be tolerated. Would lock arms with like-minded legislators to make sure we stand up and make sure, like I said, this is not tolerated at all. No way.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Slomski, this goes to you first. Pennsylvania is among the more than 20 states where capital punishment remains legal. Inmates were last executed in Pennsylvania in 1999. Should capital punishment remain legal in Pennsylvania? Why or why not? And if you oppose it, what legislation would you put forward to make it illegal? If you support it, what argument would you make on the Senate floor for keeping it legal if legislators were to bring something against it forward?
I mean, capital punishment, it's one of those things that I know there's varying different opinions on it. It's hard for me to really to talk about it, because I believe that, I mean, that if someone is to take someone's life, they don't deserve to live, and that really doesn't sit with me well, and it's a tough subject to talk about, because I don't believe that. I mean, don't get me wrong, if someone is wrongly accused, that's a whole other subject, and I don't want to even go there in this conversation. But to me, if someone is going to take a life, they should not be here on this planet, and that really bothers me as an individual, as a whole. And again, similar to the previous answer, I would work with like-minded legislators to make sure that it is not. I mean, it's enforced, because it doesn't sit well with me that someone would take a life and be able to live their life even though they're in prison. It really bothers me.
Thank you, Ms. Slomski. Same question to you, Mr. Horton. Pennsylvania is among still the more than 20 states where capital punishment remains legal. Inmates last executed in 1999 here in the Keystone State. Should it remain legal? Why or why not? If you oppose it, what legislation would you put forward to make it illegal? If you support it, what argument would you make on the Senate floor for keeping it legal if legislation was brought forward against it?
I oppose it. Let me just back up. I had two of my sons murdered here in Erie in the 49th district in an 18-month period. I've had a granddaughter kidnapped here, 2 years old, threw out like garbage, sodomized, and the kid's has life without parole. As a NAACP member, I've always long been an advocate against the death penalty, because so many people have been found who have been placed on death row, only later to have been found to be innocent. And in most things, I don't believe that it's administered equitably. I think that it's a disparity in the who gets the death penalty and who doesn't. But I think that life without parole would suffice, and I would support legislation asking that the death penalty be abolished in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Deep breath, both candidates. We've reached the lightning round. I want to thank you both for those answers and that insight into your positions and your platform. To change up the pace, we are going to go into the lightning round. These are quick questions, and we're going to be looking for either a yes or a no response, or your choice from options provided. Nothing more. That's what we're looking for, quick answers. Angela is going to handle the first half of the lightning round, in which we're going to go with the order we have been. So it'll go Mr. Horton, then Ms. Slomski for all 6 of hers. We're going to reverse that when it gets to me with question 7, and I'll take it through 12. Candidates, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Angela, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
All right, Mr. Horton. Will you take part in PennDOT's study of changes to the Bayfront Parkway?
Will I take part?
In PennDOT's
Yes.
study of changes to the Bayfront Parkway?
Yes.
If a person complained to you about budget problems, would you reply directly?
I always do. Yes.
PA District 49 is better off now than it was 5 years ago.
I disagree.
Was illegal, now is medicinal. Marijuana, should it be recreational?
Yes.
Should state parks, Presque Isle included, have an admission fee?
No.
Should high-speed rail be a transportation priority?
Yes.
Thank you. Same round to you, Ms. Slomski. Will you take part in PennDOT's study of changes to the Bayfront Parkway?
Absolutely.
If a person complained to you about budget problems, would you reply directly?
Of course.
PA District 49 is better off than now than it was 5 years ago?
No, it's not better off.
Was illegal, now is medicinal marijuana. Should it be recreational?
Yes, it should.
Should state parks, Presque Isle included, have an admission fee?
Yes, they should.
Should high-speed rail be a transportation priority?
Yes, it should.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now my round. I think I only heard one disagreement there. So we'll see how we do on these 6. Ms. Slomski, those are all going to go to you first.
And I apologize. I was the one with the doorbell ring here. I'm just gonna. We should be good. It should be just a delivery here. My dog and cat will get it. Sorry about that.
That's awesome. I've got my dog on watch
Apologize.
duty as well.
That's begging right now.
All right, Ms. Slomski, we're going to start with you. Pennsylvania's total state budget: too big, big enough, too small?
I think it's too small.
Would you push for a standalone brick and mortar community college?
No.
If the Northern Pennsylvania Regional College was the only community college option, community college-based option in the 49th, would you support it?
If it was the only
option.
Only one, yes.
Pennsylvania State Troopers. The state has too many, not enough, just the right amount.
Oh, not enough.
Can Pennsylvanians tolerate a tax increase in your first year of your first term if elected?
No.
If you do not win the primary, will you support your opponent?
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Horton, same questions to you. First one, Pennsylvania's total state budget, too big, big enough?
Right?
It's just right?
These yes nos? These are just yes nos?
Yes, no's.
Okay.
So Pennsylvania state budget. For this one, choose an option: too big, big enough, too small.
Not big enough, too small.
Would you push for standalone brick and mortar community college?
Absolutely.
If the Northern Pennsylvania Regional College was the only community college-based option in the 49th, would you support it?
No.
Pennsylvania State Troopers. State has too many, not enough, just the right amount.
Not enough.
Can Pennsylvanians tolerate a tax increase in your first year of your first term if elected?
Absolutely not.
If you do not win the primary, will you support your opponent?
Yes.
Candidates, thank you so much. That was a fun lightning round, back and forth. We just have a few more questions before your closing remarks. Reminder here, we're back to the 1-minute response rule. So you have a minute each to answer these final questions. Angela's, go ahead and get us started. We're going to honor the same order we were before, so it'll go to Mr. Horton first, then Ms. Slomski.
Okay.
Mr. Horton, given that the average age of voters in the primaries skews older, what measures are you taking to attract younger voters?
Well, I'm reaching out to them through social media platforms. I'm going door to door through super voter lists off the van. And those super voters that have children, I'm asking them to register their children to vote. I'm asking the church groups, the youth groups, even the schools. I'm forging relationships with the school board directors so that when a kid turns 18, they automatically ask them, do they want to vote?
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Slomski. Given that the average voter's age in the primary skews older, what measures are you taking to attract younger voters?
Very similar to what Mr. Horton mentioned. Social media has been key, especially during this pandemic, of getting the word out and talking to folks. We've been doing a lot of phone banking and really focusing on younger voters as well, having those conversations with all voters, but especially some younger voters that said, wow, I didn't even think you would want to reach out to me. I said, absolutely. And having those conversations and explain to them, there's been some great questions on what the campaign's all about and just the overall election process, so on and so forth. And making sure that folks parents are registering, they're getting their children registered and interested. I even have some young folks that are helping me out that aren't even able to vote yet. And so excited about that opportunity. Just again, spreading the word and engaging with them, especially on social media. Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Slomski, this question is going to go to you first. Earlier, we asked each of you why you identified as a Democrat, as well as how your vision of the party at the state level aligns with that in the national level. Tell us briefly how you would work across party lines with those who have differing political ideologies or parties to accomplish legislation for the good of all Pennsylvanians, irrespective of their party affiliation.
And it's something I've already done, working with our local legislators. As I mentioned, Senator Michelle Brooks. I mean, we may not agree on every single issue by any means, but most importantly, it's coming to the happy medium and meeting halfway. There's obviously important issues on both sides of the aisle, but it comes down to those relationships and that trust there that, we can actually, come to, again, like I said, a happy medium somehow, some way. But it's just one of those things that, we're not going to agree on everything by any means. And there's been gridlock and what have you, but you have to find a way to negotiate, and there's always a way to do so.
Mr. Horton, same question to you earlier. We did ask both of you why you identify as a Democrat and how your vision of the party at the state level aligns with that at the national level. Tell us briefly how you would work across party lines with those who have differing political ideologies or of different political parties to accomplish legislation for the good of all Pennsylvanians, irrespective of their party affiliation.
Sure, I have to do that right now as in my role as chairman at County Council. I just believe that there's safety in the multitude of counsel, and anyone knows me knows that I like to hear multiple opinions. Unlike my opponent, I will not walk lockstep with the Democrats. I will reach across the aisle. I'm not going to Harrisburg to work for the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm going to Harrisburg to work for the working men and women of the 49th district. And wherever the twain shall meet, I believe that whether you're Republican or Democrat, the communication, however good or bad things may be, communication can only make it better. And everything I've ever accomplished has been through relationships.
Mr. Horton, name at least one, if not two, bills supported by or led by Senator Dan Laughlin that you would have supported as a state senator.
I would have supported the bill when the children burned in the fire. I wouldn't have taken I thought that his delivery, his bedside manner on it left a lot to be desired. But that's certainly one bill I would have supported. And in Harrisburg, although I'm against hunting on Sunday, I know that you have to give and take in Harrisburg, and that's one I might have yielded on and supported Dan on as well.
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Slomski. Name at least one, if not two, bills supported by or led by Senator Dan Laughlin that you would have supported as a state senator.
I mean, I see what Mr. Horton says on that tragic situation with the children losing their lives, the daycare. But I just believe that was overly politicized, and that wasn't the right time on that. But one bill that I do believe in, Senator Collette and Senator Laughlin are co-sponsored, is family leave. I think it's something that is important. I've talked to many folks along the way that agree as well. And it's one thing that I think I could work with in terms of supporting is family leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slomski. The final question before we get to closing remarks goes to you. Final question. 3 qualities you admire about your opponent here today.
I admire his passion. He's always been passionate. I mean, always. And like he said, he's a true blue Democrat that, yes, we can work on both sides of the aisle, but always, one to motivate. I mean, there's been times we may have not agreed on issues, but we've always had that respect there. So I say he's passionate, he's motivating, and I've always admired his hustle. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Slomski. Same question goes to you, Mr. Horton. 3 qualities that you admire about your opponent here today.
Yep, her stick-to-itiveness, her willingness to work with the entire community, and the way that she represents her employer.
Mr. Horton, thank you. Ms. Julie Slomski, thank you. Thank you both for all of your responses throughout this debate. We are grateful for you spending the time here with us today to go through the questions. Not all of them easy. We appreciate your answers. We appreciate you sticking to the rules and everything working through. The final note with the final rule are the closing remarks. And so because Mr. Horton had won the random drawing earlier and offered opening remarks first, Ms. Slomski, you get closing remarks first. A friendly reminder, you have up to 2 minutes. Your closing remarks, Ms. Slomski.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Spagan. And thank you, Ms. Beaumont, for having us here today. Really enjoyed the conversation from all aspects of the 49th District. And again, my goal is to always keep fighting for Erie. I've never given up on Erie, and I never will. I'm not done yet. And yes, you know, to me, this is an opportunity. I guess it's the best way phrased is a couple of friends of mine have said, you know what, Julie, it's Thanksgiving dinner. You've been at that little kid's table for far too long. I believe this is my chance to go to the big kids table and continue to fight for Erie as a legislator. Most importantly, the community as a whole here deserves a fighter, and I want to continue on and be your fighter. Again, never giving up on Erie, never will. Thank you for having us here today, and I hope for those that are listening that I can count on your vote on June 2nd. Thank you so much.
Ms. Slomski, thank you. Mr. Horton, your closing remarks, you have up to 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank you, Ben and Angela and Ms. Slomski for participating in this venue today and providing the voters a chance to draw a contrast between the two opponents. I said we were similar in a lot of ways because we both hold true to democratic principles. The thing that separates us, though, is experience. I truly believe I'm the most experienced legislator on either side of the aisle. I've been elected to leadership posts, not only by my peers at county government, but throughout the community work that I've done. I'm going to Harrisburg, and I'm asking for your vote because I believe that the essential worker, that we've placed a value of $7.25 an hour, the worker who's going to work during this COVID-19, risking their life daily, I believe they need a fighter and they need a champion. My opponent is right. Harrisburg does need a fighter, and you would want to send someone who's actually been in a fight. I've been in a number of them. Again, I'm not going to Harrisburg to follow. I'm going to Harrisburg to lead.
Mr. Horton, thank you. And again, thank you to both Ms. Julie Slomski and Mr. André Horton for joining us here for the Democratic primary candidates debate for Pennsylvania State Senate District 49. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
And a friendly reminder, Pennsylvania elections are scheduled for Tuesday, June 2nd. Polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. Another friendly reminder, Pennsylvanians now may vote no excuses by mail. The deadline to submit that application for mail-in ballots is 5 p.m. the Tuesday before Election Day. That's May 26th. And the ballot must be returned by 8 p.m. Election Day. For more information about voting in Pennsylvania, please do visit the state's website, pa.gov, and votespa.com. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Ben Spagan.
And I'm Angela Beaumont.
Be safe, be sound, and be sure to vote. Thanks for tuning in and learning with us.
Thank you.
Great job.